and myself, Commissioner Lee. So with that, I will suspend the rules so that I can make motions or second. And I'm assuming, Sally, that you have Commissioner Gardner is not going to be here. Okay. So with that, we'll start with our regular agenda. First on our regular agenda is to approve the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held on November 18th. Any questions to that?
None. None on that or number 2 for that matter. I can make a motion to adopt or approve agenda items 1 and 2.
Okay. And I'll second that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. Number 3 is to adopt or approve and authorize the signing of a resolution, the Board of Equalizations, to create a policy enacting the procedure for the approval of minutes. I read down through that.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds pretty similar to what we do
Yes. Yeah.
with our commission.
Make a motion to approve agenda item 3.
I'll second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. Number 4 is to approve Board of Equalization assessor approved review process report.
And
Questions?
none, no questions on 4 either. So I'll make a motion to adopt and approve number 4.
And I'll second that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. Okay, number 5. Number 5 is to approve a Board of Equalization hearing process report. I went down through this one. I just wanted to point out a few things if I can get there to it. So this report is like it states in a lot of ways, it's we'll have equalization, and we'll have hearings in which the hearings are to determine like factual errors and inequity assessments, market approaches, inequity. There's more inequity. I'm just kind of running down through them.
Yeah, there's 28,
Recent appraisals.
28 pages here, and
A whole bunch of them.
Nothing jumped out at me on this. And
Property partials for total or totally destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of pointed those out, that there has been just more for reference purposes, that there has been a hearing on these, that there was officers involved looking at them. There was adjustments made, recent purchase of property, couple of those it looks like. And I didn't see anything on these that I couldn't approve of. Could you?
None. I'm just curious, on the upper left corner it says from date to date, and the from date is January 1, 1900 to date is December 15, 2021. I just wanted, is it comprehensive all the way back to year 1900? I say that nothing really jumped out at me. Just I'm curious about that upper left corner.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Any comment on that, Mr. Harvey?
Paul was distracting me. It's his fault.
Oh,
What was the question?
a legal diversion here. On the upper left corner of
Yep.
each of the pages, it has
Yep.
it from and to date.
Yep.
The from date is January 1, 1900.
Yeah, that's just a system glitch. Ignore it. The to date is the date is the report that was actually printed.
Right.
So
And it, to dates is as of yesterday, and it's on today's agenda. So just,
yeah, that's when the report was printed and generated and put onto the agenda.
Right.
So
it's just like a little thorn. When you sit down, you notice it. So
yeah, it's just I'm not sure why there was some change we made to the BOE appeal system a little while ago, and suddenly the 1900 became a default date. It's some database computer thing that
We'll have to talk to
You
the
know.
IT gurus and see if they can adjust that. But
it doesn't
okay.
affect anything. So we haven't. It's not been
Sure.
like a glitch. It was like we got to get fixed.
Yeah,
It's
otherwise we'd have
just funny.
28,000 pages, not 28 pages.
Right.
So there's nothing that stands out to me, so I can make a motion to approve agenda number 5.
And I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. Number 6 is to approve or deny the petition of the Board of Equalization to hear the appeal of the property value after the filing deadline for the parcels listed on number 6. So this one, as I read down through, it was kind of interesting. I know they checked off the box for factual error. It looked to me like there was multiples, though. It could be health, medical conditions. So anyway, if somebody's going to present to that or talk to that.
Bert Harvey for the clerk auditor's office. So on this one, I made a comment that there's really nothing that's contained in the petitioner statement that really falls in any of the categories. There's not really anything they've given us that relates to a factual error. There's nothing factually that they are pointing to, such as number of rooms, square footage. There's nothing that there's no extraordinary circumstances here that they're pointing to. I mean, their main statement was, "I didn't realize there was a deadline." Okay, well, the deadline is published on the evaluation notice, the website, and on all the appeal forms. So
They did say they had heart conditions or heart problems.
well, heart conditions or medical conditions are not extraordinary or anticipated circumstances. They don't fall into the realm of medical emergency. I was in the hospital with my medical conditions and therefore was unable to file has typically been what we've accepted in the past as a medical emergency. But
So you followed up with that to see if that was more explanation or was it just assumed from it?
we go off based off of what they put in the petition. But I think Sally does have additional information.
You talked with her?
I noticed on her evaluation notes that there was a deadline. She didn't even bring up anything about her heart or anything until we got the application, but she just told me that she didn't know there was a deadline.
Do we need Sally to go to the mic so that's on the record?
Oh,
Sally with the clerk auditors. I spoke to the appellant. She was just reading the valuation notice to me. She didn't even say anything about any heart condition or she didn't say anything. I didn't even know about it until I got the application, but she didn't even bring it up. She just says, "Oh, I didn't know there was a deadline." And then I said, "Well, if you have anything else you want to tell us about, then you can put it on the application." But she just told me she didn't know there was a deadline.
so the 400 and there was also a claim that it was just purchased. The property was purchased
It was last year, in 2020.
for like 400,000, something like that.
She claims it was purchased for $490,895.
But that's not factual, though.
You said it was
It's not factual.
So
It was purchased for that price. Mr. Jones?
That would be a fact, but that's simply a valuation issue. It's not a fact that would have played into the valuation, like square footage or finished portions or anything like that. Just simply she's saying that she bought it. I'm not sure what the assessment value was, but basically the comment about the purchase price is a valuation issue, and it's not a factual error issue. That there was some piece of information that about the property that should have been taken into account and wasn't.
Right. That would affect the value.
So-
That's typically been that's within statute and within the guidelines. Has typically been limited to a factual condition, a physical characteristic, which there is no dispute on. Amount of purchase price is based on an appraisal. An appraisal is a matter of opinion on one appraiser, and areas of market value. There can be differences of opinion, of which are a valuation question, but
Sure,
not a
but
factual
purchase
question.
price is not a valuation. That's
No, it is. It's a matter of opinion. What you pay for a property is still based on a matter of opinion and can be disputed or changed.
That becomes the market value, though. If two parties agree to it and there's a purchase price to it, it becomes a valuation factor.
Not always. I'm sorry, Commissioner. I'm not trying to disagree with you necessarily. And the assessor's office can speak more to that than I can, obviously. But what a purchase price is negotiated, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's reflective of market value for that type of property. It may be the market value, it may be the price they paid for that property, but there are other factors that can go into affecting the market value besides what the negotiated price is. Arm's length transaction, what other things were negotiated as far as the purchase price. All those things can either cause a property to be purchased for or below or dramatically above what the market value is.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But also, we just barely went through the last agenda item in which market value and purchasing prices was listened to in the hearings.
Right. So, Bert Garfield, Assessor's Office. Yes, it is true that purchase prices are important information, but for the basis of a late appeal, it's a factual error. Factual errors, like Bert Harvey is saying, are characteristic differences that we think the house is bigger than it really is or something like that. But granting the late appeal shouldn't be based upon value. It should be based upon a mistake or some extraordinary situation. And granted, they may have paid that for that, but if it was between two family members or something like that, it may have been a discount. We haven't really looked at it because there's been no appeal given to the assessor's office to look at yet. So I don't know. It's important. It would be considered. It would be considered, and we would double check it with comparable sales. But I don't think it's the right thing to do to grant a late appeal based upon an appraisal or a purchase price, I should say.
It was basically there are two appeals in here: appealing the late filing and appealing the valuation.
And we're happy to look at the value if there's a justifiable reason for a late appeal.
I mean, that's always the hardest thing that we're trying to tiptoe around here when we're dealing with the late petition, because we're not trying to get into the merits of the argument of whether the value should be lowered or what the value should be. We're strictly looking at and I know that is probably frustrating for the board because we purposely do not give you all of the entire file, because the purpose here is not to necessarily argue the merit of whether the value should be or what the value should be. The purpose is to look at the person's reasons for not filing on time and determine if they meet the statutory guidelines or the statutory requirements or guidelines. But, I mean, it's the board's decision. We're not going, if the board decides that the petitioner's reasons for being granted late appeal are sufficient, we'll move forward with that. So I'm just trying to, of course, obviously give you the most information I can and the most accurate information I can.
Well, I will just add that factual error is the one ground for allowing a late appeal that the board is supposed to get the agreement of the assessor's office. So regarding medical emergency or the death or the failure to notify, extraordinary and unanticipated circumstances, the board can act on their own. With factual error, the assessor is supposed to give their agreement to the fact that a factual error exists. So that is kind of a unique situation with the factual error prong.
Yeah. What I'm looking at is the application doesn't include the appraised value, just simply the purchase amount in the statement. I've got 3 or 4 pages there in this. And so what I'm seeing is the write-up where she's making 2 appeal, and then the residential market value of owner's opinion for the fair market value. And then there's a summary of information where at that page she signs it, but I don't, what is the actual appraised value? She's asking we keep it down to her purchase price. So I'm just curious what the difference is.
If you'll give me a moment, I'll pull that up and I can just tell you what the 2021 assessed value was.
But like Bert mentioned earlier, that should not be a factor in the decision. They should provide grounds to grant the late appeal, and then the next step would be to get into value.
The actual appraised value.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this step is simply to determine whether there's grounds or not, or to allow the late appeal.
Okay.
Okay, just for the matter of the record, and because the question was asked, wait a minute. 45, 653, 49. Sorry, I have the wrong part. I have the wrong property ID. Okay, just simply because the question was asked, and for the matter of the record, the 2021 appraised value for the property was $538,400.
So she's thinking it should be 48,000 less. Okay.
And the property was purchased in last year? This year?
I believe so. It looks like it was purchased in 2020. Let me verify that with when the deed was recorded. Deed was recorded. Actually, it was recorded on the trust deed. The deed of trust and the warranty deed were recorded on. Well, actually, the warranty deed was recorded on 10/12. But then it looks like the deed of trust was recorded on 12/10. That's funny. Was recorded October 12th, and then the deed of trust, which is the loan, obviously the lien, was recorded on 12/10. So I don't know if this was maybe
In 2020?
Yeah, this looks like a new construction. This was a home that was it's brand spanking new, as of the end of 2020.
And so what was the value of the property in 2020? Oh, I guess it would be nothing because it was a new
In
property.
2020, it was still under its vacant value.
Yeah.
The land value was listed at 138, so that's the building lot. For comparison, in 2021, the building lot went from 138 to 155.
Yeah. So we're looking, so basically the purchase price was last year, and this year we've seen increases dramatically in real estate.
And this
And you said it was and of course we do that the first year, right, Chris? So the difference between the time on this is not now, it was a couple months.
right.
So we're looking at a couple months difference between a purchase price and the valuation price. And we've got what did you say, 35,000, 40,000 difference, $1,000
48,
difference.
something like that. And as counsel is saying, our focus today is whether to grant a late appeal application.
Right.
There's additional details be nice to know, but if I were to read, I'm willing to grant the late appeal on 6 and we'll have to address the evaluation topic later.
So if we were to grant it though, would it have to be with a stipulation to look at the property value?
The granting late petition would have to be based on one of the statutory requirements for granting a late petition, which is extraordinary or unanticipated circumstances, factual error, medical emergency. I've got, was it 4 there, Paul? Sorry, he's got that listed in front of me.
Failure
Right.
to notify.
Failure to notify. There's not a failure to notify here. She referred to her evaluation notice when she talked to Sally. there's really not much grounds for medical emergency. I mean, I don't know. She's
we
not really
know.
pointing to an medical
right.
emergency. I mean, maybe that happened, but she didn't really point to that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's not really a factual error here because, I mean, it's a new construction. Factual errors, like we're saying, it's you say I have 5 bedrooms and I only have 3. That would be a factual error. It says that my house was built in 1975. It was actually built in 1960. Those are factual errors. Not really factual error here. Extraordinary and anticipated circumstances. That is pretty broad. But I would probably tell the board that in the past you have rejected similar statements from other homeowners that have made relatively unimpressive arguments when it comes to extraordinary circumstances. Her extraordinary circumstances is she wasn't aware of the deadline. She hasn't given us much to go on.
So my hang up is that we're 2 months. We've got a purchase price, which it looks to me like it's arm length transaction. You got contractors probably that are building it. They're in it for profit, not for charity. And then we have a valuation that's done 2 months afterwards that seems to be significantly higher.
If you do find that that the assessor's not reviewing the purchase price was a factual error, then in answer to your question, yes, they'd be limited to only reviewing that in the valuation appeal. So,
But we'd still have to get the assessor to agree to that. I don't know. Chris, are you a yes or a no on agreeing to that?
Walking up here because I have time to think about it. As Mr. Harvey, Chris Polson, County Assessor, as Mr. Harvey said, this is not the first time this has come before the board. And typically a value difference is not a reason to open it. We never had a problem with reviewing a value once you give your okay on whatever circumstance you want to apply.
So even if we said extraordinary
So
circumstance.
if you want to say extraordinary circumstance, we'll be happy to take a look at it. So.
Okay, thanks. Do you have a motion?
I'm open to making a motion to grant the late appeal and addressing the valuation at another time.
Under the extraordinary circumstances?
Under the extraordinary circumstances. She mentions a heart issue. I don't know if that's a one-time, ongoing. There's additional information is just not there. But for now, I'm open to granting the late appeal.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 2-0. Okay, number 7 is to deny or approve a 2021 application for a new property tax exemption for Living Water Mennonite Church. Are there people here on this issue? No?
Commissioner, this is Vicki Westergaard.
Yes.
The pastor was on earlier, Luke Miller.
Okay.
Are you still on, Mr. Miller? I saw his phone number as one of the people. It ends with 4755. Let's see. Look at the participants.
Hang on, Vicki. I'll let him on. I don't see. Are you saying?
Yeah,
that his
it's
phone
the
number is
orange one.
4755? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. He's been allowed to talk.
Okay. This is the application for Living Water Mennonite Church. They've had the properties, it looks like, since 2016. I believe he just learned about the program. And since state code says you have to apply within 30 days of the purchase or the opening of the doors, in the past, what's always happened all the way back to when Dave Shawcroft was the attorney that advised us, was that they denied the current year and approved it for the next year. because it wasn't applied for within that 30-day period. And that's, pretty close to what's always happened in the past. Mr. Miller, would you like to talk about your request for the application for the exemption? You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me there?
Yes.
Yeah. So we moved into the building in the end of March of this year, and I knew there was a program somewhere as far as getting a tax exemption. I just wasn't aware that there was a deadline or so forth, so I just filed it as soon as I was able to. So yeah.
So he applied on, the application was October 10th of 2021.
That's right, yeah.
Any other details on this that you could provide, Vicki?
They meet all the religious guidelines for it. It's the only thing is it wasn't applied, within the 30 days.
From what you've seen in the past, does it fit the religious exemption?
Correct.
Okay.
And they've owned the property since 2016?
That's correct.
And
It was
took
just vacant land.
vacant land, and you took some time to build the building, from what I understand?
Yes, it took us about 2 years, two and a half years to build the building. Well, it was all a volunteer project.
Mr. Chairman, just for a point of clarification on that, the law stipulates that they have to apply by March 1st or within 30 days taking ownership. But I believe that ownership question also is within 30 days of it is not necessarily ownership, but going into active use, meaning that, for example, if it's vacant ground and they haven't been using it and they get a building permit, they're supposed to file for the exemption within 30 days of that property going into active exclusive use.
And so you're looking for this tax exempt status for this year? Is that what this application is for?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. So what parameters do we have, Paul? What's
Because
the
just for
options?
clarity, they've owned it since 2016. Have they had applications in the past?
Have the land.
No.
Land, but have the applications for the land for that particular use?
Vicky would probably know whether or not they've applied for 2021.
They have not applied in the 8 years that I've been here. This is the first time.
And so they've just been paying the regular tax for that vacant land at the going rate then?
Yeah, I think, having applied so late, I think the board does have to honor the deadline. Now, you could accept it. You could accept him in for next year, kind of a thing, like Vicki mentioned. I don't know if you want to indicate whether or not you'd be willing to look, at the Board of Commissioners at this year's taxes. 47 green folder type of deal. I think as a Board of Equalization, they're 9 months down the road here. This year, after they began use back in March.
Right. So, Mr. Miller, what I would recommend, it looks like, at least from my opinion, that we should probably deny this application, but that you do come in and talk with, who would that be, Paul? Would that be you? Talk with Paul about getting on a commission agenda to petition the commissioners. I know we're commissioners, but in this case, we're got a different role, and petition the commissioners to look at this issue and see if there's any relief that can be given or granted to you. Because it's obvious to me that this is a religious organization. They function as such. And so I think that we have more flexibility in the commission as a commissioners than we do here to a certain extent. I don't know if you'd agree with that or not, but
No, I would agree with that. You got that fine, Mr. Miller?
Yes, I do. I guess the whole thing's a little new to me. I've never had to do it before, so just, we are a very small church, so I think 5 families. So it's,
right.
Up until this point, it feels like a little bit of a big deal if it doesn't go through.
Then I'll make a motion that
Commissioner, before you do that,
Hold on
Are
one
you
second.
going to-
Vicky,
I'll hold
you
mine.
want to hold?
is
If
he
we
going
have-
to do
Vicky,
it for
hold
this
on,
year?
Vicky, if
Okay.
Commissioner Sakovich is going to yield, but if there's a motion started, we usually have to hold
Oh, I'm
until we
sorry.
go through it. But go ahead.
Okay. I was just wondering if you were going to approve it for next year now.
Good point. And it could be. That could be part of the motion.
Yeah, that could be part of the motion, because if everything else fits, then we should be able to do that too then. So this is a 2-part motion then? Is that what we got here, Paul? Is this a 2-part motion then? We're going to deny the application for the late appeal, but grant the tax status for next year,
Yeah, you could.
2022.
You could consider this a new application for 2022.
Okay.
And grant.
Okay, so it's a 2-part motion then. I'll make a motion that we deny Agenda 7 with the addendum that we grant the 2022 application. Is that correct?
Yep, I'll second that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. And Mr. Miller, he dropped off. Oh, no, he's still there.
He's still.
Just to reiterate, so that the late appeal was denied, but the new property tax exemption status was approved going forward. But if you'd like to come in and talk with Paul Jones, he's in the civil side of the attorney's side, and he can help walk you through some more information on coming to the commissioners.
Vicky could provide him my contact information and Terry Eisel's information. And Mr. Miller should also be aware that beginning in 2023 and every year after that, he will need to file a continuing use application.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to number 8. Number 8 is a continuance from November 18th, 2021. This one's to approve or deny an application for review by the Board of Equalization for a farmland assessment. And as I was reading down through this, I remember bits and pieces of it, but I can't remember exactly what the continuance was for. Probably something specific.
Yes, it was. Commissioner Ben Stanley from the County Attorney's Office. As you mentioned, this was continued from the November 18th meeting. The Bowman Family Trust has this property that was in Greenbelt status, but they no longer have sufficient acreage and active production to qualify for Greenbelt status. So we had discussed as a board and as members of the Assessor's Office and Council, maybe making the Bowmans our guinea pigs for the new urban farming option as a possibility, if they qualify for that, which is not a given at this point, obviously, but we believe there's a strong likelihood they will qualify for urban farming. On October 20th of this year, the board authorized an ordinance that enacted the ability for people to take advantage of what's available at the state level in urban farming. Since that continuation in November, we have assembled a task force to look at the logistics of actually implementing a transition from Greenbelt into urban farming, and there's a number of hurdles that need to be crossed. There's things that have to be done in terms of, and things that the legislature's looking at in terms of surveying the actual area in an urban farm to find out a legal description so that we can encumber only the farm area and have compliance with some of the oddities and uniquenesses of urban farming in comparison to greenbelt status. And so because of those reasons, the recommendation of the assessor's office at this time with item number 8 is that we continue this one again until our May meeting to make sure some logistical things are completed. We've spoken with the Bowman family. They're here if the board would like to hear from them at all. But the idea that we are presenting is that we have, like I said, assembled a task force from the assessor's office, the recorder's office, the treasurer's office, IT, worked with the clerk auditor's office and the representative at the legislature who's the chief architect of some of the amendments that are being done to urban farming in the next legislative session. There are things they're still working out, things we're still working out about how that transition will have to happen. And there are some technology solutions that are going to need to be implemented and a few other things. So our recommendation at this time is for the November meeting or for the May meeting of 2022, we should have everything ready to be able to put them into that position if they qualify for urban farming. And so that is our recommendation, and we would add to that recommendation that we also give them some assurance. The assessor certainly from our position is not intending to have them have any negative consequences from that additional time in terms of an abatement or consent to any kind of support needed so they wouldn't have interest or penalties of any kind for those extra months while the logistics of this are worked out.
And the Bowmans are here? Are you thumbs up? Okay. Agree to that.
And I can agree to that. I'll make a motion that we continue agenda item number 9, is it?
8.
8, excuse me. Yes, number 8.
To our
To
next
May,
meeting.
I guess, May
Next meeting.
2022.
Yep.
Correct. And
I'll-
a specific date to be determined.
Do we have the date of that, Sally? May 26th.
So I'll make a motion that we continue agenda 8 until May 26, 2022.
And I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
That passes 2-0. Number 9 is to approve or deny an application for review by the Board of Equalization and Farmland Assessment Act status as stated in number 9. This one looks like it's got a gun range. And the big questions that I was trying to figure out on this one is who owns what? There seems to be some discrepancies on
Yep.
ownership.
Diane Garcia from the Assessor's Office. So there are various parcels out there that have been previously owned by one entity, and it has been sold off to multiple people out there. So there's a whole lot of parcels. I spoke with the planning and zoning, and they told me that those parcels are all illegal subdivisions. So they were subdivided without authorization, and they were created through unapproved divisions of land, and they need to be corrected before any permits or anything are created or approved. They also told me that there have been no applications for any permits, that there would need to be a permit for that shooting range, and there has not been that done, that it is not an approved use. But the rollback was done based on the fact of the ground being excavated and the forage and grasses and things being scraped away and removed, so that it diminishes and even eliminates the possibility for livestock to graze on it. They're claiming sheep, and they're claiming that through that whole conglomerate of all those different parcels that have been broken up and sold off to different people, and that has not been actually proven that there is the sheep able to graze all of those areas. Also, with the activity of a shooting range, it's not very conducive to sheep grazing as well when you're shooting live ammunition out there with supposedly sheep grazing around. But it was mostly rolled back due to the fact of the ground being scraped clear. We've had this in the past with other parcels. I don't know if you remember the ones out in Saratoga Springs where they had started like a gravel pit and they'd removed a whole bunch of the topsoil and stuff, and that was denied by the Board of Equalization, that appeal from that landowner. They appealed it to the state, and the state upheld the fact that it should not meet the requirements for greenbelt since they removed the ability for livestock to graze on it. So even if there are livestock there, you've removed the reason for them to be there to graze. There's nothing to graze on. So that was the basis for that rollback.
You were saying that it's an active shooting range.
Yes.
So we can't have cattle. When is active, is that like 3 days out of each week? Or
I don't know how many days, but in your packets, I did include like a flyer where they have, if you're interested, I do have a thumb drive with different videos from different people off of Instagram and Facebook who post videos of shooting competitions out there. So I don't know if it's daily, weekly, monthly, but it is an active shooting range and used for different various firearms.
Do we have an established percentage rate that in order to be maintained as a certain category of land use, it has to be 100% all the time, 24/7, or is it like 95%, 90%?
I'm the property owner out there of the in question parcels, and there is some legal boundaries.
Make sure and state your name.
Oh,
so we
Paul
have it.
Allen, sorry.
Okay.
But there's several parcels out there, and we are trying to clean that up on as far as the county records and everything. The planning zoning is months behind, and it just keeps going back and forth. So we've been dealing with it for a couple of years now. As far as shooting range, this is my private shooting range where I shoot, and yes, I invite some friends and stuff, but it's not a club. There's no memberships. There's no dues like that. So as far as that goes, that's just me being out there shooting. And out of 78 acres, I have maps right here, and I've outlined where the scrape parcels are, or where the scrape section is. It's 2.3 acres, approximately.
So when I'm looking at this though, and I see this that ad, is that,
Okay, can I approach and look at that?
oh yeah, sure. I think Leslie's gonna put it on the big screen.
Okay.
Actually, no, I think, well, okay, hang on, I will try. I will try.
I think that one's under the Monkey Mafia.
We're talking about the YouTube, or we're talking about, okay, we're talking.
No, we're just talking about the regular PDF.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, that looks like an is that not an advertisement for,
That is my buddy, but that is not on this range.
So this is a different range?
this is not for this range?
Yeah, he's the one that does the stickers with Monkey Militia and stuff, and he has a CCW. He shoots the pistol and 3 guns, and he's a instructor for CCW, but he does it at a different range.
Okay.
Bert's going to try to show these videos for you. So in this video on around the 120 mark on the audio, sorry.
Yeah.
In this video, if we could get the audio going, around the 120 mark, Casey Pratt, who's the guy speaking, he mentions Paul Dallin and that Paul has hooked him up with the shooting range for the purpose of these exhibition competition things.
This is an XLR buttstock. A good friend of mine, Paul Dallin.
That's gonna be done. Yeah, I won't be able to do the audio, I'm sorry.
And then after this one, just go on to the next one, just show the all
Okay.
of them, just so they can see.
All right.
These were just pulled off of various Facebook pages of people that go out there. Oh, sorry. These videos were pulled off of not only different people's, but different sponsors. So there's some different product sponsors that have these videos posted on their Facebook page and on their Instagram that of activities promoting their product happening on this shooting range.
And that, and because there are people shooting on this, in your opinion, how does that, you're saying, you're claiming that this is more of a commercial use?
I'm claiming this is more, that
private
shooting
use.
is more of the activity than agricultural, is what I'm claiming.
Okay.
That the shooting activity preempts any agricultural.
Do you have a business license?
Or,
Or,
no, it's,
no?
no, I don't run it as a business. It's a
Don't
private
collect any
record.
money?
No,
No membership fees or anything like that.
no membership fees. As far as the agricultural goes, the sheep are only on there 2 to 4 months a year at the most because of how dry the ground is. So they come out, they put them on in the spring. They sometimes they lamb there, sometimes they lamb them and then bring them out, and they're there for 2 to 4 months, and then they take them somewhere else.
How many acres?
80 acres is what I have.
And this shooting range is on how much of that 80 acres?
2.3 acres. Here's some maps if you'd like to see them.
So when you have the lambs, do you own the lambs or does somebody else graze them?
Say that again, pardon?
Who owns the sheep?
Shepherd livestock.
Shepherd. I thought I saw that in this
Yeah, that's in
application
there.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have mail.
Just so happens that one of their representatives is here. He's up after me on his own deal. Would you like me to?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll have to. In your packet, it shows a map of everything that I own, but that's. Sorry, I should probably talk in here. But in the packet that I submitted, it shows how much land I have purchased, and that is the section that is scraped. So you don't have to dig through it.
And so of the section that's scraped, that's the 2-point-something acres you're talking?
2.3 acres, and unfortunately, it's on 5 different parcels.
So and that's this whole area, the whole.
The whole green
Yeah.
is all the land that I have purchased.
That's the
The
80.
shooting range is the other one.
So I have spoken with Paul, and I have encouraged him to get with planning and zoning to possibly get the area that he does use for the shooting activity to be, because he does say the boundary lines and everything's all,
They're messed up.
it's messed up out there. To get that area as one parcel, and then the remainder could be on Greenbelt, and just the shooting range would have its own legal description, serial number, and not be on Greenbelt. So we have discussed that.
It is a little challenging because of tax districts and how the line goes right through the center of that.
Right. So it's you're asserting that you've got this big piece of land and that it's all on Greenbelt. It's been on Greenbelt.
Yes.
And you're using it for agricultural purposes with sheep, and you've got others who will probably testify to that they put sheep on there for periods of time. And it's whatever classification is, I'm sure it's probably the AUMs on that are going to be really low.
Very low.
Because it is what it is. But in the meantime, you've also put a shooting range in there, and I don't know, and I'm going to look to Paul on this. I know with the 5 1/4 acres, we pull out the quarter acre portion of it for a residential. But what do you do when you have big, huge, large pieces of property like this that are all under one ownership, and they're used like he's expressing here when there's, a scraped, let's just call it a scraped area for whatever purposes. It's a scraped area that, well, I guess, I don't know. Do you have fences around the gun range? Could the sheep get down into the grass?
Sheep go all over in there. Yeah, they're all over in the gun range. If they're in the bays or whatever, we'll just walk in there and they go out.
So there's no fence.
There's no fences around individual spots. There's fences around the outside boundaries. And it's not completely fenced. There's just sections that are fenced. When the sheep come, they usually put an electric fence around the open areas.
Oh,
to keep them
so they don't get totally out. So that's interesting.
Like Ms. Garcia mentioned, you separate out the parcels. That would be ideal. Short of that, the board has to use its best judgment and discretion. He mentioned that the shooting range is 2.3 acres, but unfortunately, it impacts 5 different parcels. One option is to look at the parcels and see, how. I only see 2 parcels in my documents. One's 1.9 acres, and one was 4 acres. So I don't know.
Right, so not all of his parcels have been rolled back and taken out of Greenbelt. Some of that issue is because of what he's recording and cleaning up and I think you've already recorded some. We're just waiting for the recorder's office to work through some stuff. So all of his property did not get rolled back, just those 2. And the one that's the small one, if you see on the aerials, if Bert can pull those up, it's on the north side.
They're both on the north side.
And it's a small 1 point something acres.
Yeah,
1.89 acres.
Yeah, so it's that kind of triangle looking one.
The left side.
So I would encourage the board to look at that, and I guess there's 2 different ways to look at it. One is to say whether or not the primary use of this parcel, or whether it's obvious that the shooting range has kind of overcome the agricultural use and intent of this property or this parcel. Another way to look at it is to find out whether or not they're still meeting the AUMs. So, for a 2 acre parcel, the AUMs, I don't know what they would be, but whether or not they're still able to produce enough AUMs on this parcel could indicate whether or not it still qualifies for Greenbelt. So I think those are kind of the 2 approaches that seem reasonable, but ultimately the board's tasked with determining whether or not each of these parcels individually meet the production levels. You could meet production levels and still have some other, if it's an ancillary use, it would still be possible. You don't have to, part of the parcel could not be amenable to ag use, but the rest of it does help you meet the ag requirements.
So Bert, can you pull back out on that? So it's larger? So I can match it with this. So the ones in red are the ones that were rolled back. That's correct? Okay.
Yep.
And then the others around it were not. And the one on the downside in which there is some shooting range activity, that was not rolled back.
Right, and that's because the ownership has not been changed. It's not showing.
It's been changed, but then we had a boundary line description or something that wasn't correct, so they had to quit claim deed it back, and for whatever reason, it didn't get put back. So it's been going back and forth for a couple of years now.
Yeah, so it's not in Mr. Dallon's ownership yet as far as our records, but documents have been recorded. So that's what, I didn't feel it was right to roll it back under the in this transition ownership.
So it's in Greenbelt right now.
And the one parcel, the more rectangle parcel, that's actually in the Bay Harbor Farms, the guy who I bought it from. And I appealed on his behalf because it's mine, but it's just because it's a little confusing. But
Right. In addition to that, just for some background, there are quite a few other parcels that are less than 5 acres that got subdivided out there, and they've now been transferred into other ownership, and those have all been rolled back due to people not having 5 acres. So they were less than 5 acres. So there are quite a few rollbacks that I did do out in that whole area.
So if we're
one-
looking at AUMs on that rectangle piece, and the sheep roam basically the whole area, even that lush and grassy areas of the
No,
of the
that's
gun
that's
range?
BYU artificial turf.
That's turf.
Oh, is that artificial turf? Okay, I was going to say, well, that looks pretty
They would all be right there.
AUM-ish.
They would have eaten it down.
There's a well there.
they still hang out there. They like it there.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I have not been provided with the amount of sheep or how long they're there. That has not been something that has been provided to me. The only thing that's provided to me is from Stan Weed, who is the owner of Bay Harbor, who was the original owner of all those. And he's the one who had the lease agreement with the Shepherd and Sons, owners of the sheep. And there has not been any amounts or any time frame given to me for me to calculate any AUMs.
Right.
I can get that for you.
This sounds a little convoluted with different properties and overlaps.
Right.
Is this something we should continue until we get some firmer facts put together?
What would you like to see?
Well, it appears if there's some overlap on parcels, that would, to me at least, need to be cleared up. I can see the sheep grazing when the ranges are not being used. It's like a dual use. But I'm also anxious to make sure that the facts are correct on the actual usage of which parcels are being used by whom.
Well, just a clarification here, like when we bought some of these parcels, for instance, the more rectangle one that we're talking about, I bought that as one lot, that and the one directly below it, approximately 20 acres. And it's taken me quite a while to figure out why they split it, but I kept going to the title company and said, why do we have 2 parcels instead of 1? But there's a tax district line right there. And that's the one that goes through. That's what Diane is referring to as far as it's splitting sections of land. They're one section of land that's over 5 acres, but since there's a tax district line that goes through it, it's getting put into 2 different lots, if that makes sense. It's very confusing.
Mr. Stanley, did you have some thoughts? Because I saw you stand up.
Just one quick thought, Commissioners, on the legal question. Mr. Jones talked about 2 different ways to look at this question. And from our perspective, in many ways, what the state law requires, as we read it, is that there is a requirement that both things happen, that you have to have a property that's by definition under the state code and the Farmland Assessment Act actively devoted to agricultural production with a reasonable expectation of profit. And you also have to have AUMs or other production that matches the tables that are produced from the state. And so, so from our perspective, you know, there are times when there's training that the State Tax Commission will do where they'll say, if a property has a gravel pit on 90% of it and they have 10% of it where they're really aggressively producing and they're baling in hay to a small little cattle corral and meeting enough AUMs to satisfy the entire parcel, in reality that parcel is not actively devoted to agricultural production with a reasonable expectation of profit, and so that parcel shouldn't be on Greenbelt status. So we would urge the board to think about both of those requirements as maybe both required. It's got to be, by definition under the statute, actively devoted to agricultural production. The point of Greenbelt is to promote this agricultural production use as the use of the property, and then also that it needs to satisfy these AUMs that, as Ms. Garcia has testified, they haven't produced at this point those kinds of data points. So that was the thought I wanted to add. Thank you.
Could you get us information on that?
Yeah, in one of the letters that was submitted, it actually states that approximately 130 ewes with their lambs are what the shepherds bring out, and obviously that changes year to year. But I can see if I can find it real quick. The AMUs, from what I've been able to find, is 1.31 per acre. According to this Farmland Assessment Act that I have here.
So if you want to continue it for me to do those calculations, so the 0.31 he's talking about is because of the land classification, so that it's a lower quality grazing. It's not, you know, grazing 1, certainly. I think it's grazing 3, or did we even say grazing 4? What was the chart?
It 5? Grazing 5?
There's no grazing 5. It's
so
either
then it
1, 2,
was-
3, or 4 on the
I've got
little.
so many papers, I don't know which one I'm at.
So it is lower quality grazing. Usually when I see people like, we use the example of a gravel pit, when we see someone scraping away the soil and doing excavation to this, they're actually removing the ability for the livestock to graze because they're scraping it down to dirt. So that's just one of the things that I look at when I see, you know, kind of instances like this. But if you want to continue it, I can do the calculations and.
Okay.
How much time would it be needed to get the?
Well, that would do it for the calculations. However, as far as all the property lines and what we're trying to fix there, that could be several more months from what the planning or the mapping people have told me. They're several months behind.
What if we went to the May one?
Would May work?
It works for me.
So was that May 20, what was that date again? 26. So I'll make a motion that we continue this to May 26, 2022.
Okay, and I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I got one last question for you.
Yes.
If somebody was to ask you, you know, what you do, would you say I'm a farmer?
No, I'm not a farmer. That's why I lease it.
Okay. Okay. All right. The next one is number 10, to approve or deny an application for
Can you
review
pull up those photos?
by the Board of Equalization
the
for,
photos that
as
are
stated in
submitted
number
for this
10.
one? Okay, so this parcel, 43, 2 and 3, One is 5.46 acres. Bert's going to pull up some of the aerials that I submitted. So this was removed from Greenbelt due to not having 5 acres in active agricultural production. The actual home site area takes up more than an acre. There's also, once he pulls it up, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So these photos are progressive from years. So that one is 2012? I can't see. There's a date usually on that. What does it say on the file?
I don't know, I'm just pulling it up off
We
of your
put them
PDF.
we put them in the order of, chronological order. So this was before the house was built. So originally, this parcel that's outlined in blue was a part of the parcel to the left of it, and it was all one big field being actively farmed. And then they broke off this piece, and the Shepherds purchased it. And then if you go to the next one,
So a question on that. So when it was broken off, did they put an application in for Greenbelt?
right, they
And was
did.
it-
And
and was
so
it
it went by the
granted?
previous 2 years' productions, which was part of the field.
So going back to it then, because obviously there's a big scraped off area here. where
Right,
nothing's
which happened
growing.
after, right. So once they got ownership, then we see the name change and they do the application. Well, the application is asking for the previous 2 years' production, which was when it was a part of the field, the whole entire piece. So it qualified then, but as they took ownership and they
Only
began.
because it was a part of the bigger field as
Right.
well.
Right, because it has to go by the previous 2 years' production. And so then once they took ownership, you can see the deterioration of the production, that it wasn't being produced like it was. But the actual home site area starts taking up more and more space, which is what usually happens. People build the actual home and then they landscape and then they start doing more things. So if you keep going,
So
Bert.
it's still in agricultural production there.
So yes, so it wasn't until obviously this year that that I noticed that it did not have 5 acres in agriculture production.
And it was there too.
So yeah, so go ahead, Bert. So you can see how the back part. So if you go back to the previous one, Bert, you can see how that's just the square where the home is, and then go again forward. And then now there's more in the back, and I believe that's all like crushed asphalt. I'm not sure, but obviously it's not a crop or anything being grown. So so that happens, we call that urban sprawl or whatever, the residential sprawl of the home site getting bigger and bigger. So when I calculated the home site, I didn't even include that back portion. I only included that front square. If you go ahead, Bert, to the next one. And then the next one, and they did put in some sheds there. You can see like that red roof long oblong thing where they have sheep. And if you go to the next one, Bert, I think I zoom in. So you can see the sheep in the feeders. So there are sheep in those pens. But then you can see all that open, open gravel, dirt area, whatever you want to call
What
it.
year was this?
This is currently.
Oh, this is the current one?
These are the current ones.
So back up. So when did they first put in I don't know. It doesn't say what year it is.
Yeah, go back to the next. It says in the file. It should have said.
I saw one that said 2017.
Yeah,
one
when
that
I
said
printed them out, they all showed the
2019.
dates. I don't know why it's not showing that, but just over time, even from 2012 until now, it just expanded. But I didn't include that back gravel area in my calculations. I just did like a square for where the home is, and then the gravel area that's around the home. And that calculated to over an acre, which dipped them below the 5 acres of production.
Yeah, is this what you're referring to, this particular date, November 23, 2021, for this one, which shows the red roof for the sheep?
And that might have been the day that I printed it.
Okay, so it may not be the day the photo
Yeah,
was taken.
it should. I mean, all of the 2021s were done between April and, I don't know, October, something like that. So,
Just trying to see if I had the right documents.
So anyway, so that's why it was taken off, was that it's originally 5.46 acres, and they do not have 5 acres that is in active agricultural production.
Okay. Come on up.
I'm J.D. Shepherd. I'm the owner of the property, but it is in active agricultural production. The whole place minus where that house is. And if you can zoom out on one of them photos,
Yeah, he can't. Those are just PDFs.
you can see, my neighbors, both sides? You can see how much is grown on the bottoms of them fields. The reason for that is it's terrible soil. It's high alkali, nothing grows there. So what I did, instead of having a mosquito mess and a wet swamp area, I brought in some fill around there. Actually, the fill I brought in and the gravel grows more now than it did with the alkali soil that was native there. On top of that, I brought in, I don't know how many thousands of dollars worth of nutrients from Spanish Fork City's fairgrounds to chicken manure to sheep manure to build the ground up that is the pasture. Now, on an average, that 3 acres that I'm farming takes care of the requirements for the sheep that we put on there, which is, I think the AUMs amount to, I want to say 13 head of sheep is what it should do. Well, we put easily 25 head on there. On top of that, we do graze the whole thing off. Yeah, it's not the ideal, beautiful pasture. It's never going to be. That ground isn't going to do that. Never has. I've lived down there 40 years, and it's never. That's the worst piece of ground in Lake Shore. So with that being said, whether that's asphalt to make it nice to get my equipment in and out of there, because we farm, with me and my family, we farm 300 or 400 acres around there. It made no sense to have an alkali mess there around my house. But in the fall and in the spring, we fence off the neighbor, which is Brett Herbst. The other neighbor, sometimes they just changed ownership. But we fence off that whole block, including my house, including everything, and they take the whole 5.5 acres, 5 acres minus where my house is. And so yeah, you're right, it doesn't, that bottom part doesn't grow. It never has grew anything, so if it grows 0, what's 0% of 0? Or you know what I mean? 0 times 0, that's what it's gonna do.
So are you talking about, so Bert, if you can go to the one, I think the folder that says Assessor Documents 6, and then down on, there's one that shows the fields next to it.
See there, right there, you can see right above the yellow, you can see the bottom of that field, how much it's growing.
Mm-hmm. It'd be slide 6. There it is. So is that what you're saying? Look at the fields there, and at the bottom,
you can see that whole strip of ground through there is about as heavy a soil as you can possibly imagine. The pH level on it's got to be 10, 11. I don't know. It's white with alkali. So that being said, I mean, what do you expect it to raise as far as production? So what I did is put my money up on that top part and made it produce to where it could keep me in production to raise enough sheep there a year to do it. Now I could have left it dirt and yeah, it's not going to change anything on the production. It actually, like I say, it produces more now because it has good soil. When we have good rains and whatnot, it'll produce feed it comes right through that gravel.
So you bought this property and split it off?
No, it's not one field. It's two different. It's always been two different fields. But I just bought the 5.5.
So before,
Acre
though,
parcel.
it was incorporated with that larger field to the left?
Yeah, it probably was actually.
It was, and then that was, so when it was divided, you bought that 5.25 or
5.5.
5.5. You bought that.
Yep. And I guess some of my frustration with all this is when I bought that piece of ground, I went designing. How am I going to stay in the green belt? But how also am I going to have a safe place to park all this equipment? So I went over and sat down with somebody. It wasn't Diane. And showed them what I was going to do. I just sat down and said, this is what I want to do. Is this going to cause me problems? And the answer was no. You need a safe place to park your equipment. That's part of agriculture. It's all part of your production of what you're doing. And that was the answer I got. So now, fast forward, and I'm in this position. I just...
So the question I have is your house and the yard that you have around the house, and it looks like it's
It's a half acre.
That's a half acre.
Mm-hmm. So there's a little berm out front, and then the grass around my house, that's a half acre. And it was all designed like that on purpose to
stay in the green belt,
yes.
Because you have to have 5 acres.
Yes.
And you got 5.5.
I mean, we graze it all. It's not that we just graze that pasture. We graze that whole block pretty much. And we put electric fence around my whole place and the neighbors, and we graze we take all the fall feed from the neighbors, and then mine we feed off. Usually we have our ewes and lambs in there in the spring throughout a good part of the summer. Well, actually, I pull them off when it gets down so I can get some fall growth back. So
I can see that, and it does look deliberate to me, like that square with the house on there was designed, minimally, if that's the correct word for it, but to keep it there. My question, though, comes back to feedlots, tractor places, agricultural buildings. I know when I look at it and it says that you have to take off the land that's underneath the house. That can't be counted, and any landscaping, areas like that. But what about and this isn't a feedlot, but there's equipment there. So where does that fall, Paul?
Well, certainly ag buildings you would include in your acreage calculation for greenbelt, and also, I know that the rules I think specify ag barns and things like that would be included. A parking area for ag type vehicles, is that what we're calling that area at the top?
Yeah, we park the equipment along. Yes, that's where I park the equipment on all of that. But
I mean, I don't know what equipment it is, but I think the board, if it wanted to, could certainly include land where machinery for ag production is being parked. I don't know.
I mean, if you look at that picture, I got a grain drill parked right next to the house. I guess not that picture is the other one. And that's when that's in this picture had been taken in the springtime, it looks like to me. And most of our equipment's probably out in the fields.
May 30th, 2019.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of our equipment's not even there, probably up at one of our farms. But anyways, that's what we do. What we do is farm, and to get told it's not a agricultural operation, I don't know what else to do. I wish all of that grew lush green grass, and it wouldn't be used for the equipment park, and we'd graze more of it. But that's what that ground will do. And in all fairness to my neighbors and everybody, it was better that was a swamp. I mean, that was wet ground, and it doesn't grow anything. So we thought, gosh, let's put our resources, instead of fertilizing that whole thing, because it's expensive to fertilize ground, let's put all of our resources into that and make it do the best it can possibly do. And that's what we've done. And we can easily keep, 25 head of ewes and lambs on there, which is oodles for what that ground.
So with this property, and the equipment, because I heard you say that some of the equipment's up on other parcels.
Well, it's just out in the field working at that time of year.
So, but is and that equipment? So you said 300 acres. Other three.
Well,
you farm
I
300
lease-
acres or lease?
I lease
farm.
over 250 acres, and my family, we all farm. We're part of the sheep. I'm the one that has the sheep on Paul's property too. Part of that. That's me and my brothers.
But would you say that the equipment that you have that you put in here that is stored is critical to your farming operation
Absolutely.
for other parcels?
Absolutely, yes.
So for me, it was this is all, you're using this for access for the sheep.
Yes.
All this-
Yeah, we use it all for parking. We have to bring semis in to load sheep in and out. It's just all part of our agricultural production process.
I'll just read you what the code says. Land under barns, sheds, silos, cribs, greenhouses, and like structures, and then it mentions bodies of water and like facilities, are included in determining total area of land actively devoted to ag use. Land that is under a farmhouse and land used in connection with a farmhouse is excluded.
Right. I read that. And I would think that farmhouse and the land around it, which sounds like it was deliberately put that way to keep a certain status in place, without the sprawl that I've seen in other cases, looks like a deliberate action taken to satisfy that. Paul, also we've had conversations in the past too about parcels of property that are used, that are critical to farming operations, and I ask that because farming's not something that you just sit at your computer with and do. It takes equipment. It takes, and you can't just drive into a little driveway and park the thing. You got big radiuses that have to be taken care of, and and parking them back and forth. I mean, I was on a dairy farm, and I know there was big pieces of ground that were used, for equipment purposes, and so I'm wondering if this, although it looks like, well, we should have intense farming all the way up to all the way around the house, to a certain extent, but if this is critical to the overall farming operations, doesn't that help to qualify?
Actually, I don't think that's applicable here, because when we talk about the critical to farming operations. I think what we're talking about there is non-contiguous parcels in the same ownership. Am I getting that? Am I getting that? Yeah, so sometimes somebody might have a 2-acre parcel that's away from the farm.
That's right.
It's non-contiguous, and they can say, yeah, but we need that because that's where we lamb, that's where we do our lambing. So even though it's not part of a 5-acre parcel, because it's critical to the overall use of the farm.
They bundle it
in
together.
the same ownership, then you can kind of bundle that together.
So I
Otherwise, you
guess
gotta have,
the question would be, do you have other property?
And he's got 300.
well-
no, he leases 300.
I
I don't know if
lease
he,
that.
if he
I-
owns.
You don't have any other property that you own?
No.
That's my understanding, kind of the critical use.
Yeah, that makes sense. I knew there was something in there. I remember talking about this. Okay.
So access cannot be counted.
Well, it doesn't say it can't. It doesn't say, it's, the only thing that I read in there that you can't count is the land underneath the house,
Right.
and those that are that land associated with the house.
And so the upper northern part, that's where they bring the semi-trucks, and that's why there's such a wide access and egress points for the semi-trucks. Is that correct?
Yeah, semi trucks and a lot of our equipment's 20-something feet wide, so we have to have quite a space to get them
That
back
looks
in and out of
critical
there
to the
safe.
whole operation.
You consider yourself a farmer?
Yes.
I'm willing to approve it.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve agenda number 10.
And I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. Number 11 is to approve or deny the application for review by the Board of Equalization for the Sparks.
This parcel is 5.29 acres. It is vacant land. There is no home on it. This parcel was taken off Greenbelt due to the information that was provided with the application, and that is that handwritten one that I provided in my documents. Do you see that one?
Yeah, I did see that one.
So on the second page, they put on there that they got 0, and they even underlined the 0, that they got 0 harvest. So I have to go by the information that the landowner provides me during the application process, and they told me that they did not have any production. So I had to go by that.
Yep. And I know they said something happened with the water and somebody was supposed to water it and they didn't water it. I did read through that.
Yeah.
And they also said they were looking at building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the second page, fourth.
Is there
page.
anybody here? Doesn't look like it. Is there anybody online? for this
There
one?
might be. I'm gonna go ahead and let someone talk. This might be them because they did say in the chat that Tim and Andrea Sparks are here. The only other person that's still hanging on that could possibly be them. So I'm gonna go ahead and.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. Can you talk to your application?
Yes. Would you like me to, forgive me, I'm a little under the weather, or we would be there. So bear with me and thank you for, so would you like me to, my computer's a little old. Would you ask the question again, sir?
Yes. Go ahead and talk to your application. You put the application in here for review from the Board of Equalization, and Diane Garcia. Hopefully, you heard her comments on that.
Yes.
Okay. And,
Yes, sir. Let me give you, to the best of my recollection, what happened. I recall in my barn here in Eagle Mountain on a bale of hay at about 5 a.m, responding with that handwritten letter, just pulling numbers as best as I remembered them from the last 2 years. That was a disservice to you and myself, because my memory, as you ask my wife, she will let you know, is clearly slipping. But nonetheless, the situation is, in 2019, we purchased this property from Mel Blaney after searching for about 2 years for the perfect piece. This is an ideal piece of property. We were 2 weeks away from submitting our plans, and the COVID-19 hit and devastated my business. 90% of what we do is outside of Utah, and 90%, near 90%, about 75% of our income instantly ceased, and has not yet, as of yet, hasn't reemerged. So most of what we do is out of Utah, and it's we do trade shows and hunting conventions and different conventions, and obviously the not being able to do those anymore. So we picked the property up in 2019. I make a deal with Blaney. I give him, he had the pivot. He has a pivot that hit most of this, and he watered it. And Carl, my neighbor, he cut it. I'm not a farmer, and he'd cut it, and I'd go pick up the hay, and it fed our animals for 2019 and 2020. 2021, I went to Blaney like before. I gave him the water. We thought we had the same deal where he'd water the ground, and he ran his tractor with his he'd clear the weeds off that section near the road where we're going to build. Well, it just didn't happen this year. When we got down there months later, it hadn't been watered, nothing had been done, and what do you do? So there we are. Our plan currently is to break ground, hopefully, in the early spring, February, and we plan on picking up the pieces. This has been a horrible event in our lives, as well as all of our lives. But we're working on plans, new plans right now, and some different things, and that's the current situation. So we'll get down there with our animals and so forth here in the next year or so.
Okay. The hay, is that for livestock elsewhere? Where do you have the livestock, and are the livestock for milking, or for butchering, or are they raised for?
Sir, the livestock are our horses for riding, and I've got minis and some goats, and so the livestock is or the hay is for our livestock. Yes, sir.
Okay, but the livestock, so it's for horses. Are the cattle or anything like that? Your production of milk or meat or anything?
No, sir. Not yet.
Not yet.
No, production-wise, no. Our plan is to move down there, have this lush, beautiful ground, and provide, that can provide feed for our animals.
So for the animals, and that's for personal use animals, then is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, and we will end up, I don't know what the future looks like. My granddaughter wants some mini cows and stuff. We'll end up with a cow or two or three. But honestly, we just want to build our home. and I did see something. We purchased this in 2019, so there's an error on the numbers. I think you had stated, or it is stated that we bought it in 2017. Yeah, they're trying to charge. They wanted to charge us back taxes for 2 years we didn't own it.
He's thinking of the rollback showing the different years.
Yeah, so the rollback, it goes with the land. So when you purchased the land, the rollback tax goes with that land, back the 5 years. And so you say you've only owned it for
2 years.
2 years?
We owned it about 2 months before the COVID-19.
Yeah. So when you purchased it, when they sold it to you, and you probably had to file an application to keep it on Greenbelt, right?
Yes, sir. And
So
what happened, I think, is we put the property in the name of a trust.
Right.
So we had to refile the application.
So when you filed that application, that automatically puts you under notice that this has a rollback tax attached to it.
Okay.
So they did an application when it was first created and they first did it. And then recently they changed the ownership and they just put it in the name of his wife, in Andrea Sparks' name. And so that's what triggered a new application, and that's what had me look at it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. I didn't realize that, but if that's what you say, sir,
Yeah. I mean, if you wanted it free and clear, you probably should have negotiated that with whoever you're buying the property from to have them pay their rollback tax on it for that period of time.
at the time we were we were pretty grateful to get the deal done.
Right. In a lot of cases, people are intending to keep it on Greenbelt, and so they're willing to risk the 5 years rollback as they know they're going to go forward for at least another 5 years.
Oh yeah, we had 100% had absolutely every intention of keeping it on Greenbelt. There was no.
So you though, from what I'm reading though, you're stating that it's not in production. I mean, you don't have.
This year I gave him my water. He didn't water my land in 2021.
Right.
So I gave him, you can check with Strawberry Highline Canal, so it didn't produce.
So
we got a little bit, but very little.
Yeah.
If any.
So it's out of production. That makes it really hard for us because when you're out of production like that, and I mean, you're admitting to that there's no production in there, it makes it really hard for us to claim that it's still on when it's not, when there's no production there. I don't know of any other choice that we have but to deny this application. Just because of production.
I understand. Our hope was that due to circumstances out of my control, or all of ours, which is the COVID-19 pandemic, took my life. And directly related to that is what happened here on our property. It's all tied in. So I understand looking at the numbers and the paper, sir, I certainly do. On our end, we were just doing our best to appeal to the situation. And the chips will fall where they fall. But I can tell you what, whether you give it to me or not, I will be producing 5 acres on that for agricultural use.
Fantastic, and I hope that is the case in the future. I really do.
Yeah. I'm kind of
Yes, sir.
painted in a corner. on this, and I will have to, at least I got a motion that we deny agenda number 11.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Number 11's denied with a 2-0 vote. Okay, final motion then.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
And now we're adjourned. Thank you.
Goodbye.